We have breaking news into the CBS 2 newsroom. I'm Mary Calvi, and the Supreme Court just came down with its biggest Second Amendment ruling in more than a decade. The High Court overturning New York's concealed carry law that requires gun holders to show a special need to be armed in public. We have team coverage for you. First, we begin with CBS 2's Jessica Moore breaking down the big decision.
Current New York law says anyone seeking a license to carry a gun outside their house must demonstrate, quote, proper cause to obtain one, which state courts have said is a special need for self-protection.
The question before the Supreme Court right now is whether New York can do that. Do you need to show that you have this risk to be able to have concealed carry, or can anyone on the R train now have a gun in their back pocket?
Challengers to the law argued the Second Amendment protects the right to carry firearms outside the home for self-defense, while supporters warn invalidating the restrictions could lead to more firearms on the streets. Supporters also maintain the Second Amendment was adopted to allow militias to fight the government, not allow everyday citizens to carry weapons for personal defense.
The question here is just a very narrow one. Can any state, not just New York, say, can you not have a gun when you're walking around town unless you're special? So the question is the default rule you can have the gun, and you need to take it away only for someone with a mental illness, or is the default rule you can't have the gun and you can only have it if you have a special need for safety?
Even after the shootings in Buffalo, Texas, Tulsa, Philadelphia, and Chattanooga over the course of just a few weeks, the majority conservative court ruled anyone can carry a gun anywhere. Constitutional attorney Andrew Lieb says New Yorkers should brace for a shift in expectations.
We've lived since 1911 with a law that said most people you're talking to don't have a gun on them. And now you're going to feel like most people you are talking to do have a gun on them. And that creates a different energy going on. Most of us in New York knew if we wanted to live in that environment, we could move to Texas.
But attorney David Schwartz says the High Court's ruling simply allows regular people to carry a handgun in the state, not just the privileged few, celebrities, ex-cops, those with cash businesses as it is currently.
Someone who works late at night, that's leaving work late, it could be a nurse, it could be anybody that has to walk around late at night. They don't have a right now to get a carry permit. The idea that criminals now will go out and start applying for licenses, for carry permits, I think is a little bit illogical. It's going to be people that can't show an extraordinary purpose but still want to carry a gun. And that really does fall within the heart of the Second Amendment.
Schwartz says the state will still be allowed to regulate where people can carry firearms and may exclude certain places like the subway system, ballparks, and schools. The High Court struck down the New York law on the grounds it's too strict and gives too much discretion to state licensing officials. The ruling marks a disappointment to many New Yorkers who think federal gun regulation should be stronger, not weaker.
The state of New York has made strides in reducing gun violence, and they continue to do so. We need the federal government to step up and to prioritize life-saving gun safety measures.
New York State has no recourse on the SCOTUS ruling, barring a change in justices or a constitutional amendment.
Biden said it recently, is that you're not going to win the fight, I'm paraphrasing, on what the Second Amendment says. But what we can do is take away the liability protections on the federal level for the manufacturers. And even though then the government wouldn't be restricting people from having guns, the manufacturers, based on exposure concerns, would themselves restrict people from having guns.
Lieb pointed to the settlement reached in February that forced Remington to pay $73 million after the Sandy Hook massacre. Remington was the maker of the rifle used in that 2012 school shooting. The settlement bankrupted the gun manufacturer. In the newsroom, Jessica Moore, CBS 2 News.
And records obtained by CBS 2 show as many as 20,000 guns could inundate the streets of New York following today's decision. And now a high-ranking NYPD source tells CBS 2 it could take the city years to comply. CBS 2 political reporter Marcia Kramer has been following it all. She joins us with a story you'll see only on CBS 2. Marcia.
Well, Mary, the NYPD already has a 4-point plan to try to limit both the number of guns and the places it will be legal to bring them now that the Supreme Court has overturned our strict gun laws. On the other hand, more people may try to seek and get guns.
The NYPD has always been quite careful about who they give permission to carry guns, and that has really kept the number of people carrying guns lawfully way down.
Richard Aborn of the Citizens Crime Commission is right when he says the NYPD has been careful and some say admirably stingy when it comes to issuing gun permits that allow New Yorkers to carry concealed weapons on the streets of New York City. CBS 2 has learned that at present, only about 1,700 people have the right to carry a gun when they leave home. 1,400 more have carry licenses issued by other counties that need New York City endorsement to carry in the 5 boroughs. The big worry is the people who have been issued permits to have guns in their homes, which can also be used on a firing range. Conceivably, they could be turned into concealed carry permits because of the Supreme Court decision. CBS 2 has learned that 16,462 city residents have so-called premise residence permits, 773 have premise business permits, and 2,403 have carry guard permits that can be carried while working but have to be left at the place of business at the end of the shift. John Miller, NYPD Deputy Commissioner for Intelligence and Counterterrorism, tells CBS 2 in a memo that a ruling against New York does not mean that you wake up in the morning of the ruling and the premise permit magically turns into a carry. Depending on the ruling, it could take New York a year or two to implement, Miller says, especially if the court allows New York to limit the places a gun can be carried, so-called sensitive places.
So the question becomes, what constitutes a sensitive place? So I think there's some obvious ones. Places where large numbers of people gather, mass transit, the subway, stadiums, theaters, movie theaters, probably schools, probably houses of worship.
Is it going to be Miss Kitties on Gunsmoke? Check your guns at the door, Miller asks. The reality is that other states have gone to unrestricted carry licenses, have had a shared experience of people who can't bring them in certain places, leaving them in cars, and the guns being stolen in car break-ins. That just recycles legal guns into the hands of criminals.
There is a question about whether or not the city will be able to restrict people from locking guns in their car. That's important because the thing we don't want to do is encourage an increase in car break-ins.
So now the NYPD and the mayor will have to figure out how to adjust their permit rules. Richard Aborn says another concern is whether relaxed permit rules spark a demand for new permits from people who now don't own a weapon. Meanwhile, Governor Hochul is expected to quickly call a special session of the legislature to deal with the ruling. Mary?
So much to go through right now. Thank you so much, Marcia, for that exclusive report. Let's get right now to Assemblyman Charles Lavine. He has been in the middle of this and is dealing with it. Of course, legal teams right now considering the scope of the ruling, the breadth of it, if you will. Assemblyman, what is your reaction?
My reaction is that this decision is going to cause tremendous chaos, not only in New York, but in other states that have similar rules and regulations about concealed carry and about possession of weapons in general. The decision itself is over 130 pages long. And is quite technical. In fact, it's hyper-technical. It's written by Justice Thomas, who is supposed to be a strict constructionist and originalist, and yet in this decision he says that what the founders had in mind in terms of the Second Amendment doesn't really matter so much these days, as opposed to any number of other decisions that are more conservative in nature that he advocates and backs. But in essence, what we are left to do is to try to figure out what did the founders have in mind when they drafted the Second Amendment, and how does that apply to guns in the modern world. And that's not going to be an easy decision to make. So not only New Yorkers, but many people throughout the United States of America, especially the 80% of people in our nation who believe in gun safety regulations, are going to be left scratching our heads and trying to figure out what is the best way to approach protecting our citizens.
A century-old law, obviously a major blow to New York State's gun laws right now. The way forward, as we've been talking about, is location-specific restrictions. Do you see that in our near future?
It will have to be. The decision does indicate that sensitive places can be protected from those who are carrying guns. Now, those sensitive places are schools, houses of worship, colleges. It could be within 1,000 feet of a school, places serving alcohol, government buildings, public parks, public transportation. And yet we're going to have to sort all that out. And this is going to be a very daunting proposition for all New Yorkers and for all Americans.
Assemblyman Marcia Kramer on set with me. Marcia, you have a question.
Yeah, Assemblyman, I know that because you're head of the Judiciary Committee, you're going to have to be looking at all these things. One of the things that's in the opinion is that while you can detail sensitive places, you can't just say all of Manhattan is a place where you can't carry a gun because it's overcrowded. So when you sort through what you can do in the Assembly Judiciary Committee, will you be looking at that? But also, will you be looking at the other states that are contiguous to New York that are affected, like Massachusetts and New Jersey, to find some way that you can have a regional response to this as well?
Marcia, we are going to have to do that, and this is the truth of the dilemmas that we face today. National politics and gun safety regulation is national politics, are now state politics. They're not only state politics, they are local politics as well. So we will have to look to work with our neighboring states, and these are some of the complex states in our nation. In other words, these are the states with larger populations and a demographic that runs the full gamut of economic, demographic, and ethnic, and racial. And we will have to look to see what we can do to make sure that we are protected not only within the confines of New York, but once someone goes over the border into Connecticut or New Jersey, of course.
Assemblyman, there's another question, though. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you know, the governor has said that she would move quite quickly to call a special session of the legislature to deal with this. I know it's such a large opinion, and there's so much to digest, but do you have any sense of how quickly you could be up and running to deal with all of this?
I would anticipate within a matter of days. I would anticipate by next week. It's not as if we didn't have a sense of what was going to be in the opinion. We did. Anyone who had read the argument, which was quite interesting, in the briefs, saw what was going to develop. Sad, however, that a conservative majority of this court now puts every American at risk. And I think the real answer here to what we do is twofold. First, those of us in states like New York are going to analyze the decision in great detail. We are going to pass laws to protect our citizens, and we are going to have to do what we can do to convince Americans in general to be part of the political and the governmental process. Because without that component, without both these components, we are going to see worse decisions coming from courts such as the Roberts Court.
And that is certainly the question as to what comes next in regard to gun laws that exist in New York. Do you expect to hear more cases in regard to those?
I think that this decision has opened the floodgates to years, generations worth of years of litigation.
100-year-old rule now eviscerated in New York in regard to the conceal and carry. New York State Assemblyman Charles Lavine, thank you so much for taking some time to talk to us this morning about this breaking news. And Marcia, this comes as we are set against a backdrop of several mass shootings. Of course, the racial attack in Buffalo that killed 10, then the school shooting, the mass shooting in Uvalde, Texas. So reaction is going to come swift. And as you heard from the Assemblyman, we expect something within days.
Well, I think that what they're going to try to do is come up with some laws immediately that will stop the flood of people demanding to get carry permits. But I think that there's two things that are going to happen here. Number one, they're going to have to look at the laws as what the Supreme Court did and what they can do, and then what localities can do. Because New York City might have to pass a law, as Richard Aborn talked about, to prevent people who can now carry guns from locking them in their cars if they're going into a place like a school or a mall where they can't bring the gun, because then that could increase people, car thefts and people breaking in to get guns, and then you're going to take these guns are going to become illegal, they're going to be on the streets, and, you know, gun violence, etc.
And also, the New York governor has a reaction to this ruling from the High Court. Let's get to that reaction right now and listen in.
Today, the Supreme Court is sending us backwards in our efforts to protect families and prevent gun violence. And it's particularly painful that this came down at this moment. We are still dealing with families in pain from mass shootings that have occurred, the loss of life their beloved children and grandchildren. Today, the Supreme Court struck down a New York law that limits who can carry concealed weapons. Does everyone understand what a concealed weapon means? That you have no forewarning, that someone can hide a weapon on them and go into our subways, go into our grocery stores, like stores up in Buffalo, New York, where I'm from, go into a school in Parkland or Uvalde. This could place millions of New Yorkers in harm's way. And this is at a time when we're still mourning the loss of lives, as I just mentioned. This decision isn't just reckless, it's reprehensible. It's not what New Yorkers want. And we should have the right of determination of what we want to do in terms of our gun laws in our state. If the federal government will not have sweeping laws to protect us, then our states and our governors have a moral responsibility to do what we can and have laws that protect our citizens because of what is going on, the insanity of the gun culture that has now possessed everyone all the way up to even to the Supreme Court.
Now, many New York gun owners support the decision to strike down the state's concealed carry law for those at the Nassau County Rifle and Pistol Range in Uniondale. The issue is a matter of common sense.
If you have a permit, right, you're permitted in Nassau County, right? Why shouldn't your permit be good in the city? Okay, or Nassau County, New York permit, why isn't it good in New Jersey or California? All right, your marriage license and your driver's license good all over the United States, but your permits are not universally accepted by other states.
If a place is unprotected by firearms, it's a soft target. That means anyone with malintent can go in there and expect no resistance whatsoever. So it's an open invitation to do whatever they want because they're dissatisfied with something.
When it comes to protecting students from school shootings, one gun owner said the best way to move forward is to arm teachers. All of these questions we are discussing here on CBS 2 as we have received the decision from the High Court that the central New York State law that places strict limits on handguns has been overturned. CBS News national and legal correspondent Jan Crawford joins us now from Washington, D.C. with reaction to all of this. Jan.
Well, I mean, I think it's important to first point out that what this ruling does not do. It focuses on the New York law and a handful of others that are just like it, that require people, if they want to get a concealed permit, to show that they have that special need for it, that there's an extra reason that they need that concealed carry permit instead of just wanting to carry one for self-defense. And the court, in its 6-3 ruling written by Justice Clarence Thomas, said that that violates the Second Amendment. The core reason for the Second Amendment is to provide law-abiding citizens with the ability to carry a gun for self-defense. And of course, in 2008, for the first time, the court said the Second Amendment protects your ability to have a handgun in your home for self-defense. Today, the court is taking that next step and saying you can also carry it outside your home for self-defense. In states like New York, including New Jersey, California, Maryland has a law like that. Illinois used to until a lower court struck it down. Some of those more populous states, those states that require that extra hoop that you have to jump through, that's unconstitutional. But the court and the justices, the conservative justices, writing separately, took great pains to say what the court is not doing and what this ruling does not say. It's imposing no limits on common sense gun regulation. In fact, the court has said that the right to own a gun, the Second Amendment right, that is not unlimited right. And so that has nothing to do with, for example, potentially some of the gun legislation that we're hearing now. The court says this would not prevent states from passing permit laws. They just can't require that extra hoop that New York had. And one of the justices, Justice Samuel Alito, in his separate opinion, pointed out that this law was on the book in New York. This law has been on the books until today when the court struck it down, and it did not stop the massacre in Buffalo. This is about, because of the ubiquity of guns, being able to give law-abiding citizens the right to go get a permit and carry a gun for self-defense if they believe it's necessary.
And now many are concerned, though, that this may be just the beginning. Are other restrictions now going to be called into question, including what we've been talking about in regard to those stricter limits?
That's the next step. And I think any time the court rules on the Second Amendment, because it's been so rare, this is only the second case since the court decided in 2008 that the Second Amendment protected your individual right to own a gun. This is only the second time they've revisited, so of course this is a major case. One of the things I think that's going to be really interesting is to see to what extent states could try to prohibit concealed carry in some of those sensitive places. That came up at the oral argument. Some of the conservative justices thought it was really not necessary to get into that right now, and Heller itself suggested those laws would still be okay, as would other licensing laws, various restrictions on the type of guns, any time that you could restrict someone from, say, felons and mentally ill from owning a gun. The court's cases on the Second Amendment taken together suggest that all of those laws are still okay.
Jan, you've been mentioning the oral arguments, and one of those was the question as to whether there should be a determination in, density of population. Should it be different when you consider New York City versus Wyoming, maybe, Manhattan versus upstate New York? But in the end, it seems like they did not take that into consideration when it came down to this ruling.
Absolutely not. And the reason that, you see some of these states, and of course, like I said, 43 states don't have this kind of extra hoop that you have to jump through. But the states that do are some of the more populated ones, like California, like New York, like New Jersey, like Illinois, until that one got struck down, of course. But, that's something that the justices said. If you're walking, and this was some of the lower court rulings too, if you're walking in a high-density area late at night after you've gotten off your job, then you may have more of a need for self-defense than if you're sitting up in your 35-floor high-rise in your home, where the court has already said you do have a right for self-defense. So states have to be, or at least the 7 states that weren't, the court said, more sensitive to that and the rights of the individual to protect themselves with a gun if they're outside their house too. But, in terms of the rural area versus, it's interesting if you look at the different state laws. Vermont has the most wide open, no restrictions, but of course it's much more rural, and we've seen some of these more populated states pass the more restrictive laws. Not all of them, of course. Many of them are in the South. Florida doesn't have it. Texas doesn't have it. Those have big cities too. But the point is, are these restrictions doing anything to stop the mass violence? And the conservative justices in this ruling and in subsequent opinions that they have attached to it say that that's not the problem. The Buffalo shooter didn't go try to get a permit. He just said, I'm going. And so this case will have no impact on stopping any of that.
Jan Crawford. Jan, thank you very much for taking time to talk to us this morning. And stay with CBS 2 and CBS News New York for complete coverage of the Supreme Court's decision to strike down New York's concealed carry gun law. We'll also have updates on our website at cbsnewyork.com. Of course, the CBS Evening News with Norah O'Donnell will also have complete coverage tonight at 6:30 here on CBS 2.